I doubt she's stupid, but boy, oh boy, she's surrounded herself with some stupid people, including the President of the United States of America, who seems to think that Donald Trump drove inflation to 9.4%, when in fact, inflation was hovering around 1%. That's what Donald Trump handed off to Joe Biden. And guess what Joe did? He took it and ran with it. And he allowed so much spending. It is crazy. I was looking at spending as a percentage of GDP rate recently, and I'm telling you guys, it's all out of whack. It's like 1.5 times what we've ever spent. Like, it's more than we spent during the World War II times. And yet this is what we're doing because, well, Joe Biden wants to buy more votes, including all those kids that don't care 2 bits about him. He thinks he can buy their vote by just paying off their college education. Then he's got Chuck Schumer, who put through all of these stimulus packages. He himself handed out a 3rd stimulus check. And then you had the Federal Reserve, courtesy of Jerome Powell, that could not stop printing. So this was a mess. And you know what? Joe Biden is responsible. Under his watch, we had 9.4% inflation. It went from 1 and change to 9.4. Okay. And then guess what? When it goes to 6% the next month, it's not like it came down. No, it's 9.4%. And then on top, another 6%. And then on top, another 4% and 3%. And you get the picture, right? Because nobody in Washington, D.C. gets the picture. Certainly not the President of the United States. This is brilliant. So, Janet Yellen, former Treasury Secretary, we hope she's going to be the former Treasury Secretary, current Treasury Secretary, former head of the Federal Reserve, first female Fed chief, first female Treasury Secretary. Not bad, eh? She went on Fox with my former colleague Neil Cavuto, and he asked a good question, which is like, what do you do? What do you do? You're an economist. You know better. You've seen the numbers. You know who is responsible for 9.4%. What do you do when Joe tries to tell you that it wasn't him? This is kind of funny. She just embarrassed herself and her boss. But, you know, apparently truth doesn't matter to these people. Here we go. Watch.
That I wonder if you could weigh in, Secretary, on Joe Biden constantly saying, and I don't believe he's ever corrected it, ma'am, that inflation was 9% when he assumed office. And I've talked about this with other economic advisors of the White House, and they find ways to say, well, it was getting there, and that's what he's referring to. But he keeps saying it was 9% when he took office. You're the top money person in the White House, and you know that was not the case. Have you ever tried to pull him aside and say, Mr. President, just so you know, inflation was not that high when you took office?
Well, look, the pandemic had hit the economy, hit America and the world with full force at the time that President Biden assumed office. And
which is why it was so low, right? Which is why it was so low when he took office. So I know that fact was behind that and what was going on, and you're quite right to point that out. But he doesn't. He doesn't say that.
Well, inflation hit 9% at its peak.
16 months after he took office.
That was due to inflation was lower before the pandemic. That's absolutely true. And into the pandemic, a year or so, inflation began to pick up because of supply bottlenecks, and later Russia's invasion of Ukraine led to spikes in food and oil prices. It briefly hit 9% and has come down. It's 2/3 down from that peak. And all throughout, we've enjoyed strong economic growth, a robust recovery from the pandemic.
So the trend is your friend, and there are differences of opinion on how what he refers to when he goes 9% when he took office. You're right. 16 months later, it did get that high, but that was under your.
I mean, I'm embarrassed for her. Really, I am. I'm embarrassed for her. And I feel for Neil, and he did the right thing pointing that out. Like, why does nobody ask these questions? Really? I mean, she goes on CNN, she goes on CNBC, everybody gives her a pass. It's like, no, the president's lying on inflation. And you sit there and say, fine. And then she couldn't admit it. Did you see that? I mean, wow. This is the woman who sat there with a straight face and told us transitory. I think inflation is just transitory. And I have no doubt that behind the scenes, she's like, hey, Jerome, hey, Jerry, Keep it going, keep it going. We got to keep printing. We got to keep printing. It's what the boss wants. It's what the big guy wants. And if the big guy had 2 brain cells, he would actually understand and have known that, no, you don't want that, Joe. You know why you don't want that? Because you're going to get mass inflation. And if you get mass inflation, that is a sure ticket not to getting yourself elected again. Okay, so let me just speak really objectively for a second. I mean, I'm the one who called out the second stimulus from Trump because I knew it would result in inflation. So all politics aside, you want to win, you don't put a bunch of inflation on the backs of everyday Americans, which means you know that you got a conflict heating up with Russia. And believe me, they knew. I think that they should have done a heck of a lot more from a diplomatic standpoint to stop that one, but they didn't. So they knew that was coming. And yet simultaneously, you're shutting down energy markets left and right, telling everybody they got to go buy an EV. Come on. You know that that's going to cause inflation. Duh. But it's like, they're either not smart or it's intentional. Take your pick. Neither one is very good. You know, it's because of this. It's because of this mass inflation and this sort of blatant political spin that they're putting out there. It's because of that I started 76 Research, 76research.com with my colleague and dear, dear friend, Rob Horton. Rob is brilliant and he's an amazing stock picker and he's done this for over 20 years. I'm not too bad myself, right? And I see a lot of macro stuff. And so being able to combine macro sensibility with really just in the trenches stock analysis was what I was looking for in terms of being able to offer you guys something. Because all the time people say, well, what do I buy? What do I invest in? I get that all the time. And I'm going to tell you something. Whatever you do, make sure you do invest, okay? Make sure you're investing. People say, oh, I don't have the money. Find it, okay? I mean that, whether it's just $10 a week. You got it somewhere, right? Skip the lattes or the Dunkin' Donuts or whatever you have to, because inflation is here. The train has left the station, and you're not going to be able to count on Uncle Joe or Uncle Sam, right? So you've got to actually do something for yourself. And I can't stress that enough. And look, you know, things go up and down and all of that, but Rob and I pick good companies. And if you are invested in a good, smart way, that is something that will pay off over time. And so I really wanted to do it. It's why I created this. I mean, I certainly don't need to. It's you know, I believe in what I'm doing and I believe in you guys. And I want you to have a solution. So we're running a 4th of July special. You can actually get the 76 report for $1 a month right now, because that's how strongly I feel about making sure you guys get access to this. 76report.com. There is nothing like it out there. And I know that because I've worked with financial research companies before on the consumer side. And it's all dumbed down and it's not very good research. I'll just tell you. I mean, it's just not. It's not like this. And I've worked on the Wall Street side, so I know what the Wall Street research looks like. And well, it's not dumbed down. In fact, they try to talk in some kind of code, while simultaneously, the problem with Wall Street is that they have all their own biases that are in-house biases. Oh, we're invested in this IPO, therefore we need to push this, that, and the other. This has none of that. So this is just straight from us to you. It's authentic. It's real. We stand by every bit of it. It's $1 a month. Do that for yourself. Go to 76report.com. For an additional $23, you can get the model portfolio. I'd recommend you do that too. 10 to 15 stocks. Listen, guys, you know what? Time is running out in the sense that these guys are going to keep printing. And they're going to keep doing stupid things. And I don't care who gets in office. You know what? I love Trump, but he loves low rates. And so he's going to be all about, can we keep those rates low? And you're going to have, if that's the case, you're going to wind up in a situation where we're going to continue spending. Every single one of these politicians, they want to spend because it's the easiest way to deal with things in the here and now. I mean, I shouldn't say that about Trump. In fairness, I know how much he hates inflation. And I know that he wants to solve this. He does like cheap money, and what real estate guy doesn't? But at some point, you got to either be really smart with the cheap money or figure out a way to get this down. And we need to figure that out. But in the meantime, do what you can for yourself. Go to 76research.com or 76report.com. Type in this word, dollar, 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 because that's all you're going to have to spend. $1 a month. That's the introductory rate for a couple of months, I think. Anyway, go check it out, everyone. It's well worth it.